Welcome to a Nonsense Wars production. Today's 1/48 scale model is the Pennsylvania Railroad B1 electric locomotive. These tiny 060 engines worked on the Northeast Corridor primarily as switchers from 1926 into the 60s. A handful of units even survived into the Penn Central era. In some ways, they are a better match for my P54 passenger cars than my T1. I started working on this model in 2015 while trying to build the smallest possible 1/48 scale power functions locomotive, but I initially shelved it after minor technical difficulties and discovering smaller designs. Not too long ago, someone on Eurobricks expressed interest in the model, so I decided to dig it up and try to complete it once and for all. The final product is 25 studs long and weighs 468 grams. It is still quite small for an engine at this scale. The construction of the model is pretty straightforward. It is studs up everywhere except for the sloped ends and the chassis frames. The front and back of the body are angled using the same geometry as the ends of my P54 passenger cars, and the frames are pointed outward using small brackets. The frames and body come off as a single piece in order to access the battery and drivetrain components. The section of roof with the pantograph also comes off by itself in order to access the power button. The decals are simply inkjet printed on shipping label paper. Underneath the shell, you can see the arrangement of the battery box, motor, and receiver. Figuring out how to arrange these components took up most of the engineering effort for this model. The biggest breakthrough came from mounting the motor vertically over the rear axle, minimizing the amount of drivetrain required to reach the wheels, which are then linked together using 8-tooth and crown gears with an ultimate gear ratio of 1:3. The component layout unfortunately limits line of sight to the receiver, and connectivity suffers considerably. That being said, the locomotive runs pretty slowly even at full speed, so I have plenty of time to chase it down and jam PF signals down its figurative throat. Of course, the trade-off for low top speed is typically high torque, and the B1 does not disappoint in this department. Even though the 9-volt geared motor is relatively weak, it is geared down enough such that, in combination with the 468 grams of weight and 4 tired wheels, it can pull quite a bit and will typically lose traction before it stalls. At the same time, the drivetrain does not appear to produce enough torque to rip apart the chassis, which I have only been able to plate together. Typically, I would use Technic frame pieces to reinforce such a construction, but I could not use them in this model due to other drivetrain constraints. Finally, I want to call out one more consideration when building even relatively small fixed wheelbase locomotives like this one. The distance between the coupler face and the leading trailing axle can limit the space of buildable models, at least if you want to navigate all R40 track features. The worst feature to navigate is typically an S-bend, as the coupler needs to pivot very far in order to compensate for the overhang past the relevant axle. Too big of an overhang will pop the magnet. The problem compounds when coupling two models with similar wheelbases. On that note, this is the end of the commentary, so have a nice day.
Right, but I mean, like when you break it apart, it's not like you can break it into small pieces. You either like take the landscape, make it so you can take the landscape.